Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 119, and we're continuing along with another mission brief episode where we break down an ITS mission and going to give you some tips for success in playing that mission and some other cool tricks you can do and things like that. And for this episode, we're going to be talking about Firefight. And Firefight, it's a fun mission. It is kind of chaotic and very deadly because this is one of those missions that falls under annihilation with extra steps. There are some who argue that all missions are like that, but this definitely is one of those. But before we dive into talking about the ITS 16 version of Firefight, we want to give a quick shout to Mo Games, sponsor of Metachemistry. And if you go visit mo-games.com, you can find all kinds of sweet Infinity, and they just got a restock recently, moving to a new warehouse and all that jazz. And if you are a patron of our show, of any paid level, you get a 10% off discount code to that store. And on top of that, anyone who is a member of our Discord, whether you are a patron or not, you get entered in to win a $40 coupon code each month. So to enter that, you just be a part of our Discord. And to win, you have to have a US address for Mo to ship to. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. And so for this episode, it is Ian and myself. Ian, how are things going for you lately?
They're all right. Had to take a little break from gaming recently because my wife got us tickets to see Weird Al Yankovic at Red Rocks on one of my normal game nights. So had to skip that and go see Weird Al, which was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully a good time at least.
Oh, yeah. It's just he's been doing it for so long at this point. So he's like just a ton of material. And there was even some of it just ended up being like a medley montage of parts of songs that he has parodied. But it was over the top and ridiculous and tons of fun. So that's been great. Outside of that,
nice.
Is getting excited for Infinity, getting excited for the Krug, getting excited for Warcrow and all that stuff. And I just got ship notification for my June releases for Warcrow, so that should be here relatively soon. And also my Infinity stuff is in that too. It's all of it together. But the stuff for Warcrow, we're finally getting some extra units for the CNN elves, so they can have a little bit more variety.
They're not all just ambushing archers.
Yeah. So that's kind of the issue right now in the release schedule, is that you've got two factions that are released at Gen Con last year and have gotten consistent monthly releases. And then you've got another faction that came out with the Kickstarter and as effectively has the most of all the things, at least, beta rules as they were right now. And then you've got the CNN who released at Adepticon and haven't gotten a additional release yet. So this is the first additional releases from their release at Adepticon.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that there was that gap. I kind of figured that they would be releasing pretty consistently to kind of help get them up to speed a little bit.
Yeah, I don't obviously know like what their production schedule is. I know that some of their release slots for Warcrow seem to be taken up with reprint runs of like the basic trooper units for the stuff that's been previously released, because they've been selling it so well. The common thing is that if you don't get it like on pre-order at release, that it's kind of hard to track a lot of this stuff down. So they're trying to figure out how to like ramp up production and things like that. And so that seems like some of those release slots may have been taken up with some reprints. And that's on top of the was it the December release schedule getting pushed back a month because so they could try to catch up on production, which I know we want our things, and sometimes it's frustrating, but it's also like, wow, thing is like taking off. So it's really cool to kind of see that and getting it on the ground floor at the start of the game and see it actually being successful. So that's very very cool. But yeah, and then we're getting the next two factions, the actual full release rules for the CNN and the initial stuff for the Feudum coming out at Gen Con in
Science.
August. Yeah.
They're opposite of the Scions of Yaldabaoth. Not the elves. I mean, I guess they're also elves, but not the CNN.
Yeah. So yeah, because there's the quote unquote good elves that live in the forest and murder everybody, and then there's the quote unquote bad elves who deal with the undead and flesh crafting and all kinds of nasty stuff. So
and keep to themselves.
Sort of.
Mostly, they just live in their little foggy villages.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. I'm really enjoying watching this take off and grow, and the game's been, honestly, for the most part, it's just been pretty enjoyable. A lot of cool exploration of how units go together and work and things, because it's all brand new. It takes me back to part of like when I first started Infinity, and everything was new. It's like, oh, how does this work and what does this do? And a lot of exploring how to build stuff more, because it was new and I wasn't as familiar with it. Whereas now it's like, okay, it says this, and this combination lets it do that. And okay, cool. We know what it does because we've been doing this for so long. But there's some magic to the exploring, and learning it and going, ooh, that's really neat. I didn't know that could do that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Scions get like a release, especially with the recent update to Warcrow, that they'll feel like a real part of the game, because that's kind of been my issue getting the handful of games I've gotten so far, is that they don't really feel like they were made to play the game. It seems like the cards were kind of an afterthought so that you could do something with them, but they're not terribly cohesive, and some stuff doesn't really make very much sense and things like that. But yeah, I'm excited for the Song of the Dormant box to come out.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, I've been playing some Infinity, semi-regularly. Just got a game of Tunguska in this past week. So that was fun. Played this very mission, in fact. Played Firefight and went on a jaunt with Raoul Spector. It was a good time. He loves this mission.
Yeah.
And speaking of Firefight, why don't we start off by getting everyone on the same page? Ian, if you want to go over the mission objectives, please.
Yeah, so when we joke that it's annihilation with extra steps, it's annihilation with extra steps.
Pretty much.
But what we mean by that is that it's not just killing all of your opponent's stuff, it's making sure you kill more of specific types of things. So it's you can kill a lot of stuff and lose the game because your opponent killed very specific things of yours that are worth more objective points. So it comes down to, at the end of the game, if you have killed more specialists than the adversary, you get 2 objective points. And that's any type of specialist. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Any type of specialist counts for this. To kill more lieutenants than your adversary, you get 2 objective points. Killing more army points is worth 2 objective points. So again, you kill more stuff of theirs, but they get your lieutenant and a couple specialists over you. And they're going to pull that win on you.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, to acquire more weapons or items from the panoplies than the adversary, that is only 1 objective point. And there are 3 panoplies across the board on the center line. And then there are 3 classified objectives worth 1 point apiece.
Yeah, and there are no tactical support options for this mission, so you don't have to worry about which targeting reticle you drew.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I said, what it does is fine, How you get there, less so.
Yep.
But yeah, so like like you said, first blush, it's kill stuff, kill all things. That's how you win this mission. So it's a very, very aggressive mission. One of those things where you typically want to strike hard, strike fast, show no mercy.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I do like about, and I think it was season 15 as well, but at least in season 16, there are 3 classifieds. I think previously there were 2.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was last season or the season before, but either way, they added another classified, which kind of helps because one of the things that would happen is that you'd see people playing lists where they don't bring any specialists. They'll just build a firefight list and it will be completely void of specialists. So you are unable to get those 2 points on them because you can't kill any. Even if you did the same, then both players are just out those 2 points.
I still do that. I'm that guy. but the thing is be 3 classifieds. Yes, it incentivizes you to take specialists, but also the spread of classifieds now, there's a lot more of them that you can do without specialists, where you just need a unit type, a heavy infantry, a medium infantry, or somebody with an MSV, things like that, where it doesn't necessarily need to be a specialist. It just needs to have a certain characteristic. So when you're drawing, 2 pick 1 3 times, there's a good chance that you'll be able to get some classifieds that you'll be able to do. Also with the secure HVT swap out for one of them. So there is some options there. If you do want to be that guy and not take any specialists to deny your opponent the opportunity to get those 2 points.
Yeah, it's definitely still possible. It is just harder because you still, I want to say, without looking at the deck, I want to say approximately 2/3 of it needs a specialist. Like there are some where it's like, okay, maybe you technically don't need a specialist, but like I can't remember what it's called, but the one where you have to gizmo or medikit an enemy trooper.
Yep. Nano espionage.
That's the one where you need a veteran elite to make a whip check on the enemy's half the table, I thought.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know which one you're talking.
Maybe you are right. Maybe it is nano espionage.
Yeah. But yeah, now that there's a lot of gizmo kits getting kind of passed out to kind of random troopers.
But they're generally still specialists.
Generally, but not always.
I can't think of any.
I'm sure there's a couple.
I mean, maybe there are. I just don't know of any offhand. Because there are some, like the first one that came to mind was the Tech Bee from Pano, for instance. But that one's still a specialist operative.
Yes.
Maybe like the O12 Tinker or one of the jackboots, potentially. But no, I think they're actually paramedics and engineers, so not that either.
Yeah, they're usually tagged together. I think there's a couple that are not, but that doesn't mean I'm correct on that. I just think that I am.
That's fair. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like there are some where it's like, okay, you don't have to be a specialist to get this per se, but you're almost always going to be a specialist in order to have the opportunity to take that one as an example. But I think that that's good to kind of have some of that push and pull. And, it's not quite to the point of forcing specialists to be there, but it is definitely an incentive to have a couple, if you can swing it, that can cover a variety of things. But yeah, I think that the extra classified definitely helps, because that's the other thing too, is that it helps it not just be, okay, shoot everything, or, preferred method of murder, as the case may be.
Here we go.
Ooh, what'd you find?
Mars spiders. They have a gizmo kit as standard equipment, but they have a specific paramedic and specific engineer profile. They're not specialist operatives natively. But all of them have a gizmo kit.
Yeah, yep. Okay, all right.
So there's some out there. I knew I was correct. Don't ask me for another one. I don't know.
Fair enough. It's good enough. I will see the point.
Yeah.
But So as far as the special rules that you're going to find in Firefight, they define what killing an enemy trooper means. Basically, you just have an enemy trooper in a dead state or ends the game in a null state. One that is important that you know have to pay attention to is that troopers that don't ever show up count as being killed. So you can't
Yeah.
just, hide your guys off the board and keep them safe in that way. They still count for points, and if they're specialists, they count as specialist kills, etc. And then you have for lieutenants, kind of the same idea is that if they go to dead or end the game in a null state, one that kind of makes this extra aggressive, like anytime I see the no quarter rule, which is the one that says that the game doesn't end in retreat, that always is a flag saying you want to be aggressive in this mission.
Yeah.
And this is already a mission that favors aggression. So you can't lose by gunning down your opponent too much. One, it's hard to anyway, just by the nature of how the scoring works. That if you have some wildly oppressive alpha strike or a massive string of good luck or whatever the case may be, and you knock your opponent into retreat top of one or something, one, you're probably going to win just because of how the game scores. But two, it doesn't give your opponent an out if they manage to, take care of a bunch of classifieds or something on their turn, and you
Mhm.
didn't get their lieutenant or something. And so maybe they could find a way to tie you. And then the kind of big rule that separates Firefight is the designated landing area. And this is what makes this kind of an airborne deployment unit's paradise, where if you are dropping via combat jump, you get a +3 mod to your phys roll. And if you are going to parachute on, you may parachute any table edge, including the enemy deployment zone. And if you really want to make sure things come down, the combat jump mod is cumulative with controlled jump from an Evo hacker, for instance. So +6 for things to combat jump is a lot.
And if you already have an additional plus to your combat jump natively,
Like Hellcats.
like Hellcats, yeah, you
Yeah.
could potentially have a +9. You're coming in.
Yeah, they just auto land.
Yeah.
So, yeah, airborne deployment is exceptionally versatile in this mission and is very likely to appear. And you have to plan for your opponent to have some, unless you just know for a fact that the faction they're playing doesn't have the option.
Mhm.
There are a few of those, not very many, but there are a few factions, like Oban comes to mind.
Yeah, because the Taishin is only in Shinden and Vanilla.
Yep, exactly.
Take that, Oban.
Yeah, you be content with your Oniwaban instead,
Yeah.
and Shinobu, and, and all the heavy infantry.
Yeah.
And then there are the panoplies, and as Ian mentioned before, they're spread out across the center line at 12-inch intervals, halfway between both deployment zones, and they work the same way here that they work in other missions. Basically, you can just have a trooper go interact with them as a short skill, pass a whip roll, and you get to roll on the panoply chart, which I believe at this point mirrors the booty chart. I
Yeah,
believe
it
they're
does.
identical at this point. And then if the trooper has the booty skill, they just roll on the chart and they automatically pass the roll, or rather don't need to roll, however you want to look at it,
Yeah.
to grab something from a panoply.
And then they
And you get
also
to
importantly can re-roll if they get something they already have.
Yeah, anyone can re-roll. Unlike the normal booty special rule, anyone who activates a panoply, if they happen to roll something they already have, then yeah, they get another chance to try again. And, just like the booty chart, there are some potentially big swings. There's little stuff like, oh, well, you got hand grenades, and that might be cool for you, but for many troops, it doesn't really matter. Or you might
Mhm.
all of a sudden pull out +4 arm or MIM -6 or a heavy
Yeah.
machine gun or
I'm just saying, I do miss the N3 days of getting, you pull something you already had, you just get extra burst. That's
Right,
right,
yeah, yeah,
because I'm dual fisting heavy machine guns. Let's go.
right. This trooper has one. I'm now a burst 5 base.
Yep.
Yeah. And then specialist troops are the same as they are in other missions, what you expect: hackers, doctors, engineers, forward observers, paramedics, chain of command, spec ops, those sorts of things. Spec ops as in specialist operative, not spec ops as in the customizable trooper. I often abbreviate to spec op because it's the much more common rule in the game, but bears mentioning.
It's confusing everybody, Devin.
I'm ruining it. And lastly, the quantum anomaly zones. So each player gets one of those, and you drop them before deployment, but after you've already taken care of the initiative roles, so you know who has what, who is taking which role in the game, and you can place them anywhere not on terrain that it fits and is outside of both deployment zones. And these are difficult terrain 0G and saturation. And anytime you activate uh, with an order in the zone, then you take a PS10 BTS hit, which is the lowest or the highest probability of survival of any attack in the game, but it's just
Still
always worrisome.
still 50/50 on a lot of guys.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. If you play factions like Ariadne, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Or you could play cool factions, and then it's much less scary. But yeah, and then failing those is just straight damage. So it just, you know, the tear in reality just noms on you a little bit. So yeah,
Yes, it does.
so that kind of paints a picture of what Firefight looks like and how it plays. Oh, actually, I suppose one other thing that should be mentioned is that both players get 16-inch deployment zones,
Yes, very
unlike the
important.
standard 12. So forward deployment has that much more value, and there's no other restrictions, like there's no exclusion zone or anything like that. So it's kind of a free for all. You can just throw stuff at your opponent, and you're in fact encouraged to do so.
Yeah. Going first is real good.
Yeah, yeah. I know that's one of the things that we've kind of been going over. Like, oh, what sort of philosophies might we have to go first or second in given missions? But I feel like this is an easy answer. Like, you want to go first,
Yeah.
kind of no matter what.
Yeah,
There's
because even though it scores at end of game, if your opponent cannot push the button, they cannot win the game.
right.
So just kill everything.
Cannot push a button if you disable his hand. Yeah.
Thank you, Sergeant Zim.
So, yeah, this is a mission where, unless there is just some wildly lopsided table that is just going to put you at an insurmountable disadvantage because you have a list where you can't handle sniper towers, or you have almost nowhere to deploy without your opponent being able to throw shots at you or something like that. Like, it would have to be extreme for me to consider not taking first turn.
Hmm.
Like, there's just so much weight on going first, and that's probably the main thing I dislike about the mission. Like, it's a fun mission overall because it's kind of the simple approach of like, all right, well, we're just gonna go kill stuff mission, but there's a little bit of extra things to do. Because like Annihilation, I feel like I never feel like playing Annihilation
No.
because it's just shoot guys, and this is mostly that, but there's enough to make it feel different. But I don't like how heavily it incentivizes going first when going first has the advantage already of just being first.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
Yeah.
it's a mission where if you don't have a strong ARO presence or the ability to really dig in places that are very difficult to get to, you stand a solid chance of just getting eaten by certain builds, especially
Hmm.
like very war band heavy builds that just gets a ton of stuff in close super quick between the extra deployment area and potential forward deployment, infiltration, airborne deployment. I mean, there's so many things where you can just really swamp somebody right off the bat and leave them with nothing to really come back with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as far as this mission goes, I know we've kind of danced around it a little bit, but what sorts of things are you reaching for when you are planning for this mission? So, this is again one of the missions that will be at the Corvus Belli Krug this year. So, let's talk about it, say, in that context.
Mhm.
This is in the lineup, and what comes to mind? What are you looking for?
Um, so obviously faction dependent, based on what you have access to, but in
Sure.
general, I'm looking at cheap war bands with templates, smoke if you've got it to help you advance, anything with forward deployment or infiltration that can help me just get guys there faster.
Hmm.
Airborne deployment is more of a niche for this. Like, it's very, very good, and I would consider always taking at least one piece of airborne deployment. Um, but you got to kind of factor like which profiles you have access to get the most out of it. Um, while the extra part doesn't really help, say, Mirage 5, because they already do that, they're an excellent example of something to bring for airborne deployment, because they will just
Yes.
shred through somebody's deployment zone and probably get their lieutenant. I would say
Sure.
super likely to, and between super jump and other things that have a lot more opportunity to get to some of those hard to reach places that it would be good to try to hide your lieutenant or specialist or something to not get killed. Um, Outside of that, things that are good at CC, I actually really like for this mission, because you're
Sure.
starting so much closer, you have more opportunity, and CC is the kind of go big or go home skill, because you generally are going to roll less dice and it's risky to get there.
Hmm.
But if you have somebody that's good in CC, it's very strongly in your favor in most encounters, especially if you pick them wisely and don't go up against something else that's also extremely good in CC, where then it's kind of a toss up.
Sure.
uh Things with heavier armor can be very good, just so that they can kind of wade through some of the stuff that you're going to be throwing them into, as far as arrows. Being able to shrug off hits, or having multiple wounds and take a hit, or both combined, is great. That
Hmm.
said, I'm hit and miss on heavy infantry and tags, because they hit all these buttons really well in many cases, but the thing that makes like warbands really good is also the thing that makes tags and heavy infantry vulnerable, in that if your opponent has any repeaters and hackers, they stand a good chance of shutting that down. So uh I'm not saying not taking them, but like heavy infantry with stealth, so that you have a little more
Hmm.
control over how you're approaching that problem of hackers. It might still be very difficult, but being able to move through a hacking zone and get outside of it without taking a hack can be very useful. But not
Sure.
always possible if they've deployed efficiently. But yeah, that's anything that is going to let strike fast and strike hard is going to be very useful.
Hmm.
Templates, CC weapons, high burst, looking for shorter range bands. So this is an area where if you can get some good like longer range shots at angles, like HMGs, of course, are always good, but Spitfires come more into their own here with that shorter range band. Mark 12s, uh, Red Furies, things in that realm that are still going to be putting out relatively high damage at least burst 3, if not 4, are
Mhm.
going to be super good. And if a model has a direct template and also has a regular option, the ARO fork can be super important here just to force your opponent to pick a path and then hit them with the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's something you can afford to trade with.
Yeah.
I, but doubling back on the hackable trooper, particularly the heavy infantry and portion of it, I don't feel like I would shy away from those. I think they're good for the reasons that you mentioned, is that
Mhm.
they are much harder to kill, and that they, especially like tags, for instance, is that they are a brick of points that, as long as you can keep them operational, that's going to give you a good advantage in terms of RP points scoring metric.
Mhm.
But that if your opponent hacks them, that's not enough. Like they still have
Uh,
to, not only do they take the time to
yeah.
hack the units and apply all these debuffs to them, they still have to go in and take the fights and actually finish them off if you score anything
Mhm.
off of them. So I think they're pretty valuable for that at least. But yeah, I would say in terms of things that I'd find valuable, I would immediately look. First thing is, what are your airborne deployment options? Just because they're so favored in this mission that you can do some really interesting stuff. So, like I mentioned, I brought Raoul Spectre, and I've been gravitating towards the FTO version with the multi rifle since N5 came out. But he's still a MIM6 gunfighter with a burst 3 boarding shotgun in the drop form, and that gets a lot done. And he's also got great CC. He's natural born warrior, martial arts 2, 3. No, I'm not sure.
Martial arts enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's CC 23. He's got martial arts. I believe he is natural born warrior. Uh, he's MIM 6. He's no wound incapacitation. Like, he's an elite drop troop like that is a really potent
Mhm.
option to have available.
Yeah,
Yeah, martial arts
even
level 2.
basic drop troops can be good depending on their loadout. Like this is a
Hmm.
mission where if I was playing US Ariadna, the Airborne Ranger is a pretty basic option. It's a good
Sure.
option, but it's a pretty basic option, and it's one that generally I would take. The SMG profile. Um, yeah, you can do a rifle or maybe the boarding shotgun. Like those are also pretty good. But this is a mission where I'm like, no, I'm going to go for the Spitfire because it's like
Yeah.
it's this is a mission that profile is made for.
Right. Yeah, and the reason it's so important is just because of how flexible airborne deployment troops are. There's just so much benefit to potentially having some 80 troops, and even multiple 80 troops.
Yeah.
And so, with that, that kind of leads into my next main point is this mission, because you're not necessarily going to go first. Whoever wins that role is taking turn
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time. So having units with mine layer, having uh, a lieutenant that can start in a marker state, like a camo lieutenant, is really potent.
Yes.
Uh, having 360 visor units is really valuable, so it's easier to, you can watch your backfield without compromising, potential other AROs. Total reaction, honestly, even, I mean, the Thunderbolt has become a really good option. The Total Reaction Thunderbolt is solid.
Yep.
And this is one of those missions where, because a lot of tables don't often have terrain that breaks up your backfield edge, that's something where if you can find a safe-ish spot, you can just put them right on the edge of the D's on touching your board edge and watch anything come on. And there's almost no drop trooper that wants to take 3, or if you take the HMG, 4 free shots just for the privilege of walking on the board. It's a
Yeah.
really good deterrent. So those sorts of defensive pieces, perimeter weapons are great. So things like crazy koalas, mad traps to a lesser extent are really potent. But yeah, mine layer I think is really, really bad. So things that jump to mind are like the Puppet Master in Tunguska, or Raven Eye officers in O12 and other places that can bring them. Like Raven Eyes are great for this sort of thing, because typically you just need one save to go through on those 2 halved BTS saves, and that stops whatever it is.
Yep.
Generally speaking, assuming they don't have Warhorse.
One other thing that I think is worth mentioning is chain of command, because like I'm torn on the use in this mission, because it's potentially an additional lieutenant that your opponent can kill, but because the mission only ignores retreat, it doesn't ignore loss of lieutenant. And the goal is to kill lieutenants. You could find yourself in a turn being in loss very easily. So I like the idea of having chain of command for that, but understanding that it's potentially a 3rd lieutenant kill that your opponent can get, when normally they could get maximum of 2.
Sure. And it's a specialist, which
Yeah,
is
and it's a
worth considering.
specialist. I said I'm torn on it. It could be useful, but it could also be dangerous.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it really depends on the context of the list. I don't think it is just right out where you shouldn't do it, but it should be done with care.
Yeah.
Pay attention to, is this an obvious piece? Like, is this a unit where, like, okay, if this isn't the lieutenant, it has to be chain of command, like the magisters in Kestrel, or magistrates in Kestrel. Oh well, I guess they have non-lieutenant, non-chain of command options, but you're almost always bringing one or the other.
Well, it's like a Phoenix operative in ISS is like always chain of command.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So if they're very obvious chain of command, it may not be worthwhile,
Or
potentially.
pheasant. That
That's
PH
the
bird
one.
noise. Pheasant prank.
Yes.
Not the Phoenix.
Yes, not the Phalanx rocket launcher of doom. Have him as your lieutenant. I'm like, well, you probably want chain of command.
Yeah. Well, and then like there's a few. So like the Tanuki in Shinden has a chain of command profile. But if you know anything about the Tanukis, it's super easy to know that's the chain of command profile, because it has a unique loadout that none of the others
Right.
do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So definitely something to keep in mind. Like it can be helpful because there's no reinforced tactical link is the mission special rule that normally would prevent loss of lieutenant, but because you don't know who the lieutenant is, that is a big reason I think why they don't have reinforced tactical link in this mission. It's because it's not public, like in Decapitation, for example. So other units that I think would be very valuable to be things that are immutable, particularly because if you have, let's say you have a lieutenant, but they don't have a marker state, because you probably, let's say you don't have access to a camo lieutenant, then you're going to want to put them somewhere very hard to get to. And so that may be a tall-ish building rooftop while they're prone, or inside of a building if you have playable interiors or things like that. So having units that are either very mobile and or having options for speculative attack are going to be very helpful for those sorts of things. Because typically, if you have someone that's hiding a lieutenant, to that degree, it's usually going to be one they're not spending orders on, so they're
Mhm.
usually pretty soft. I'm generally considering that like a line trooper lieutenant situation more often than not. And so a grenade launcher is still plenty enough to take care of that
Oh,
in a
yeah.
hit or two.
Because like, I'm running a Metsuke. You know it's the lieutenant. It has to be the lieutenant. I
Yeah.
still kinda have to run it because all the benefits it gives.
Right, right.
So,
And it
it's gonna
least has
be
holo projector, which
yeah,
is
it's gonna be
something.
high up, prone, with 3 of them. So, grenade launcher is great, but you know exactly what it is.
Right, right. And so vehicles can be good for that sort of thing
Yeah.
because they can much more easily get to those elevated positions. Units that have other units that have super jump, or units with climbing plus, or things like that. Multi wound drop troops potentially can just land nearby and potentially take an arrow.
Or potentially just kill it because 'cause they're like a Liu Xing or a Cascuda.
Right, there's that. There we go. The cascada. There we go.
It's
That's the
the answer
secret
to
sauce.
all of the problems.
It's like, oh, it's on a rooftop. Ba-bam. Yeah. Yeah, that is a lot of point. Just make sure you just don't forget to bring the cascada in. I don't think, most people bringing cascada won't forget to bring it in, but you'd hate to lose 60, 70 points for not doing so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so DZ defense is going to be really, really big. I think that non lethal weapons are also pretty potent.
Mhm.
Things like flash pulses and emitters and para weapons, as in like adhesive rifles and similar. Because then we're looking for things that can shut down target regardless of how tough it is.
Mhm.
Because in arrow, there's a good chance you're not going to do a significant amount of damage. But if you can at least stop the attack run, and now
Yeah.
there's no way to ignore stun, like even, max BTS 9 in cover still has a chance of failing. Not a good
On
chance.
the
On a
para
20.
weapons. The para weapons, though, I mean, that's the one because they get hit, they fail to save. They activate again to dodge out of it at a penalty, and even if they succeed on the dodge to get out of the stuck state, they might get hit with another one and fail to save and go right back in it.
Yeah, and you're really likely to fail because then almost every para CC weapon has a penalty associated when you're attacking with it.
Yeah.
So then you're taking the -6 to dodge plus a -3, 6, or in a few cases even 9. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
There's nothing dodging out of
Yeah.
that.
But
I mean,
even an
maybe a
adhesive launcher will still do the same thing.
right, yeah.
Not
I
as
guess it's
necessarily
not true.
reliably, but like it'll still do a lot of the same stuff. It's like, oh yeah, you managed to pass that the dodge on enough to clear the immobilized state, but you didn't pass the dodge on enough to not get hit with another one.
Sure. Which I guess at a -15, or no, you can't take more than a -12.
Yeah.
I was forgetting that. But also, even so, there are a couple things that would still have a chance on a -15 if that were possible, like
Hmm.
Teutonic Knights and
Yeah.
Pupniks and stuff. But -12 is where it caps off. So there's still that. But yeah, non-lethal things that can take an opponent out in a single hit, even if it doesn't kill them, I think is really valuable on defense, and then you can kind of mop up these DZ attackers on your turn. So, what about other options in terms of if you get the short straw and you're going second, what other ways can you help mitigate an enemy first turn?
Lots of good direct template weapons hidden in hard to reach places so that they spend a lot of orders to try to dig them out and then get, a chain rifle or a flamethrower in the face for their trouble.
Sure.
Like the key on it is making your opponent waste orders for no or little return. And
Hmm.
so it's, can I make them spend orders trying to move into an area to get to me? So at that point, every order spent on movement is one less order spent on scoring points, because movement in and of itself doesn't score you points. Getting it, there's no zones to get into. There's no,
Right.
it's getting to the panoplies to pull stuff out, getting into a position to kill your opponent's stuff to score points. That's what movement does. Every movement that doesn't also accompany a panoply pull or something killed is lost order efficiency. So if you can force your opponent to, through good placement and really making it hard to reach your guys, into spending 2, 3, 4 orders to get into a
Hmm.
position to take you out, that's a win. And then it also means that they're that much closer for when it flips to your turn.
Right.
Yeah. That said, AROs also operate the same way. They just also have the risk of getting shot in the face. So I think it's a balance, like really picking your fire
Sure.
lanes for AROs and then really digging in with everything else so that you can force your opponent to spend orders engaging AROs. That, while yes, the advantage is generally in their court, if you can get things where you can outrange them, which harder on this
Hmm.
mission with the deployment zones, but throw a range mod on there, have cover, have some level of mimetism. Even 3 helps a lot, but if you can get 6, even better.
Hmm.
Stack negative modifiers where you can, and they might be throwing 4.5 dice, but even with your 1 or 1.5 back, if the odds are from the penalties are so much that they are hitting on super low numbers, yeah, they have 4 or 5 chances to get that number, but it's the probabilities are a lot lower. So, and especially if you have a much
Sure.
higher probability to hit, your success threshold is wider. It's not unusual to see somebody spend 4 or 5 orders trying to bypass a hard ARO that they don't have another way to bypass through movement. And every order they spend there is an order that they're not spending accomplishing other objectives, and it's an order where they are potentially losing an important attack piece.
Sure. Yeah, I think that having a good long range ARO piece or two is really important. This is a mission where you cannot afford to cede the board to your opponent. Like if you hunker down, like sure, you might be more prepared for a combat jumper arriving on your backboard edge or dropping around the corner from a unit or something. But the fact that your opponent can quickly cross the gap and start attacking is just too much of a risk. And so it depends. Not every faction is great at having really hard ARO pieces.
Hmm.
Uh, not everyone can be a black air multi sniper with
Yeah.
friends and throw 2.5 dice with MSV2 and Mim 3 in ARO.
Hmm.
But if you have access to those sorts of tools, those are going to be very valuable because you need to, even if that piece goes down, yes, you're giving up army points, but one, hopefully you manage to snag some damage in return. But if not, hopefully at least grab a couple of orders to kind of slow things down.
Yeah. And then like
Because if you,
another perfect one is like the ninja with multi sniper rifle, because it doesn't have great ballistic skill, but you're combining mimetism 6 with long range, with cover, with hidden deployment. So your opponent may be committing
Mhm,
to a path of advance, and then all of a sudden there's this very difficult ARO if they don't have MSV that they're having
sure.
to extricate themselves from.
Yeah, and I think hidden deployment arrows can be really impactful. Like obviously
Not
there's
defer.
the kind of, yeah, there's the not defer or the blink or the Raiden or things like that, where those are kind of your best case, where you have some sort of blast template and min -6 to help you out. But even things like a Hondun can do similar in Jixing, where they're min -3, but at least they're still hidden, and your opponent can't immediately account for them, or if they can tell that something's missing, they don't know where.
Mhm.
So yeah, so those sorts of things will help quite a bit. Yeah, it's one of those things where just win the initiative roll, just do that, and you don't have to worry about that part. It's great.
Yeah.
Just
So
roll
so
better.
play Combined Army or Aleph and win the initiative
Ta-da!
roll.
There you go. That
Stupid high whip.
guarantees it. Exactly. There's no way to fail those whip 15, 16, 17 rolls.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with that, we're just about ready to transfer over to our final thoughts on Firefight. But beforehand, I do want to give a quick shout to our patrons and say thank you for supporting the show. It really means a lot to us. And for those of you who aren't on board and have the willingness and interest to do so, you can find us on patreon.com/metachemistry. And in return, we try to show our gratitude with a couple different benefits depending on the level you join in at. As mentioned at the top, everyone who is a paid level patron gets a 10% off coupon or 10% discount code to Mo Games. We have final voting on polls for members, early access to episodes like this. And yeah, we'd love to have you. If that's something that you're able to do. It also helps us kind of fund the show, take care of subscriptions, fund special projects. Part of this year, we're one of the sponsors for the Corpus Belli Krug, and that is almost entirely thanks to you folks who help us out with that. So we're going to have unique patches that will be part of all the swag bags, and then also got some prize support that we're working on for the show, including the Corregidor army that was donated to us. So yeah, lots of fun stuff there. And you can be a free patron. You don't have to have any monetary commitment to see what we're up to, and you can see posts and things like that and kind of keep on top of our releases and the like if you just want to see those sorts of things. And as far as our Discord goes, we do have some patron-specific channels there. So there's some extra spots in case you wanted to join and chat that way. But otherwise, our Discord is free and open for anyone who wants to join, talk more Infinity, and it's a great place to hang out and kind of see what everyone's working on. Particularly right now in Krug Crunch Time, there's a lot of tables being shown off, prize support minis, or people working on their armies, all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, we'd love to have you on our Discord. You can find that in the notes/description below.
Yeah, there was that beautiful Achilles that was shown off today by Corey.
Yeah, Corey's ridiculous. He paints so well. It's really, really good. So yeah, fingers crossed for that. It's not me. I'm not ready for this year.
It's definitely not me.
Right. Turns out. But yeah. With that said, Ian, final thoughts on Firefight.
I don't love the mission, but I love it more than Annihilation.
Sure, sure.
And I said, honestly, it's an absolutely fine mission. It just so heavily favors the first turn that it can be a little bit of a letdown for whoever doesn't win the initiative. And not to say that I haven't won it on defense, but it's definitely an entirely different game when you're going second. That said, it is a pretty solid mission overall. You do tend to see this at a fair amount of events because it is more on the simplistic side. It's just kill stuff and total up what kinds of stuff you killed. So it's very common. You'll see it at a lot of events. I do like that the addition of the extra classified over what it had in years past. I think that the QAZ zones adds a little bit of nuance to the deployment because you can kind of block in areas or try to head off a route of advance, make it more difficult to get through. Because even just the saturation zone is good, but if you don't have the terrain 0G or terrain total, you got to stop when you touch it. You're taking hits as you go through it. There's nothing in this mission that stops that.
Yep.
So it's a risk for everyone involved, and super importantly, that saturation zone is super helpful defensively
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you're only firing one die in an arrow, so it doesn't get reduced, but your opponent fires less. So that's another thing that can help when you're going second is a judicious application of that zone and the saturation in it. If there's a really good route of advance, just block it off a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that special dice are not affected by saturation zones. They are not burst.
Yep.
They are special die. So it used to be where, fire teams gave you extra burst, and so you lost one of your largest benefits of a fire team by having to fight through a saturation zone. And now that's kind of flipped on its head where you still get the full benefit of the special die, and only the aggressor is going to be penalized as opposed to kind of the other way around before where
Father
sure the
Knights are going
aggressor
to
is
be so
penalized.
gross.
Father Crux Knights, yeah, they are pretty good.
I'm
Turns
in a
out.
team. I'm rolling 3 dice and keeping 1, but still, I'm rolling 3
I
dice.
don't lose any in the sat zone.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty solid, turns out. So yeah, and for me, I would agree with a lot of Ian was saying, especially because like, saturation zones, the QAZ zones, QAZs, not zones. Anyway, that's kind of where I wanted to discuss was placement of those can help your defense very heavily. And again, nobody wants to go into the zones, generally speaking. Like I feel like of all the missions that I've played that use QAZs, there's maybe been 2 or 3 times where I've seen or done, either player go into the zones because nobody wants to risk free damage. Like, it's just generally not worth it. One of the only troops that I feel like is even worth considering is something like the Marut, who both has terrain total to not be slowed down and in fact is sped up, and has BTS 9, so she only fails on a 20. But even then, I'm not going to purposely go through it if I don't have to.
Mhm.
But yeah, otherwise, I would say, have your bases covered for your strong offense. That's kind of just a fundamental of list building. But really, I think it's important to focus on the defense and what is your plan for if you do not go first. Make sure you have those things where you can try and keep your force intact as best as you can using some of the things we talked about earlier. Have your camouflage, have your mine layers, have your crazy koalas, have all of those sorts of tools to make it so you are more likely to be more intact when you do take your turn.
Mhm.
And mind your deployment. This mission is incredibly punishing on poor deployment. Like you can lose top of turn 1 by just not minding your facing. Like remember that if your opponent's faction has any AD, just assume that there is some. Like you're only safe if you know they have because they can just walk on anywhere, and so at least be ready for that possibility. So yeah, so mind your defense. It's easy to go on offense, you trigger it down, but on defense is much trickier. So that's kind of where I would focus and try and practice more.
Yeah.
But yeah, but make sure to let us know what you think of Firefight and tell us if you have other tips or tricks or other things that you like that think would work well in this mission, and we'd love to hear from you. And on behalf of Metachemistry, this has been Devin.
And Ian, and that's the meta.